In the frozen silence of the Ironwood Mountains, where the wind screamed through the canyons like a beast starving for warmth, a pregnant widow named Ara Vance began the longest journey of her life. A journey not toward safety, but toward a place whispered about in fearful tones. 3 days she walked, through sleet and shadow, her threadbare shawl wrapped tight around the small life growing inside her. Her husband, Richard Vance, once a respected banker, had died 6 weeks earlier from consumption, leaving behind debts and secrets too dark to bury. Penniless, shunned by polite society, and carrying a child the world deemed a burden, Ara fled west, with only a crumpled note scrawled by a bartender who had looked at her with pity and dread. "The Ironwood job," he had said, "pays more than it should, but no woman lasts the winter." And yet, when Ara reached the clearing and saw the cabin rising from the mist, solid, smoke curling from its chimney, golden light flickering through oiled paper windows, it felt less like doom and more like destiny. There she met Silas Croft, the man whose name carried weight in every mining town within 100 miles. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his beard unkempt, his eyes the pale color of an icy sky. His voice, when he spoke, was the kind that didn't need to rise to command attention. "You're Ara Vance," he said, "and you're late." She stood straighter, trembling but unbroken. "I came as fast as I could." He studied her swollen belly, the raw determination in her eyes, and nodded once. "You'll do." That was all the welcome she got before he turned and led her to the cabin, a place that smelled of smoke, venison stew, and secrets. Inside, the fire crackled low. The walls were lined with shelves of preserved food, rifles, and tools, the marks of a man who trusted no one but his own hands. When she asked about her duties, Silas spoke plainly: cooking, cleaning, keeping the fire alive, and if visitors come, you feed them, tend them if they're hurt, and forget they were ever here. She almost laughed. Forget them, but something in his tone stopped her. "Visitors," she repeated. "What kind of visitors?" "The kind who don't like to be remembered," he said, ladling her stew. $50 a month, he offered. An impossible sum for a housekeeper. Enough to start over, enough to live. But his generosity reeked of danger. Ara accepted anyway because desperation is stronger than fear. The storm came hard that night, wrapping the world in white silence. By dawn, Silas was gone, off to tend business, leaving her alone with the crackle of the fire and the heavy quiet of a place that felt more like a waiting grave than a home. As she dusted the mantel, she found a photograph tucked behind a candlestick, a woman with dark hair, sad eyes, and a faint smile. Isabel. Even before she asked, Ara knew. That was the ghost that lived here, the first to die in this house. By afternoon, riders appeared through the snow. 2 men, strangers, armed and cautious. They spoke her husband's name, Richard Vance, and the air seemed to freeze around her. He had owed them money, they said, $5,000, the kind of debt no widow ever escapes. Before she could make sense of their words, more riders came, bloody, desperate, hunted. The cabin filled with tension and gun smoke, men glaring across the firelight like wolves circling the same kill. Silas returned at dusk, calm as the storm outside. His eyes took in every detail. "Gentlemen," he said, "let's not make a mess on my floor." They ate in silence, and Ara realized that whatever Silas Croft was, he was no hermit. He was a broker of survival, a man who traded safety for silence. That night, when the others slept, Arthur Bell, a grisly outlaw with too many regrets, leaned close and whispered, "You know the others died, don't you? The housekeepers before you. None of them saw spring." The room spun, her heart hammered. She went out into the snow just to breathe, the cold biting her skin until she almost welcomed the numbness. Silas found her there, wrapped his coat around her shoulders. "You'll freeze," he said softly. "Maybe that would be better," she whispered. His voice broke when he answered.
"The others made choices, trusted the wrong people, Isabel did too. It was then Ara understood. The mountain wasn't cursed, it was a mirror. It reflected the guilt of the people who came seeking redemption, and Silas Croft carried more guilt than most. Weeks passed in uneasy peace until one afternoon a young woman staggered through the snow, Jenna Thorne, desperate, shaking, her eyes too sharp for her story. Silas had told Ara never to open the door to strangers, but leaving her outside would have been murder. Ara let her in, and by doing so, sealed her fate. Jenna claimed to be running from an abusive husband. Silas didn't believe her. "She's trouble," he said. He was right. Within days, small things went missing: maps, ammunition, a key. And one night, Ara woke to find Jenna creeping through the cabin in the dark. They fled before dawn to an emergency shelter higher in the mountains, but even there, the past hunted them down. In that cold, narrow cabin built into a cliffside, Ara found letters, old, brittle, filled with heartbreak. They were from Isabel Croft to Silas. In those faded words, the truth bled through. Isabel had not been his housekeeper. She had been his lover. She had begged him to kill her husband, a violent man named Julian Thorne, the same name Jenna carried. Isabel had died for it, murdered and buried by the man she tried to escape. And now his daughter, Jenna, had come to finish what his father started. When the attack came at dawn, it was brutal and swift. Silas fought like a man with nothing left to lose, leading Ara through a hidden tunnel into the mountain's belly, a labyrinth of caves left by old miners and dead men. They ran for hours in the blackness, the cries of their pursuers echoing behind them until they broke through into the world again, half frozen and bleeding. They found shelter in an abandoned mining camp where Ara learned the final truth that shattered everything she thought she knew. Her husband, Richard Vance, had not just been a banker or a gambler. He had been a courier for the same syndicate that hunted them now. The ledger he carried, the one that vanished when he died, contained enough evidence to destroy the Thorne Empire forever. That was why they wanted her. Not for the money, but for what she unknowingly carried, the secret that could end them all. In the final act of the storm, surrounded by betrayal, fire, and death, Ara found herself staring down the barrel of Jenna Thorne's gun in an underground chamber that reeked of blood and oil. But when Caleb Hayes and Mateo Reyes, outlaws turned reluctant allies, stormed in, she made her stand. She shattered the lantern, plunged the room into darkness, and screamed a warning that saved them all. When the shooting stopped, Jenna lay dead, and Silas, bloody but alive, found her by the dying light of dawn. Together, they went to Denver to retrieve the ledger, hidden in a forgotten trunk. But the ghosts were waiting. Julian Thorne himself captured Ara, demanding the papers, his power reaching even into the city's heart. She bluffed, claiming she had copies, and just as he saw through her lie, Silas and the others tore through his guards like a storm come down from the mountain. The warehouse burned and Thorne fled into the night. But Ara was no longer the frightened widow who had come begging for work. "He will never stop," Silas warned her. "Then we don't run," she said. "We make him come to us." The trap was set in an abandoned church on the edge of the plains where the last of the snow melted into black mud. Thorne came, drawn by greed and pride, only to face the woman he tried to erase. She didn't kill him. She didn't have to. Instead, she offered him something far worse, a chance to disappear forever, to fake his own death and live knowing the world believed him gone, on one condition. He would dismantle his empire piece by piece until nothing remained. When the church burned that night, the flames carried away not just his name, but the last remnants of the past. 3 days later, Ara stood on the train platform in Denver. The city glimmered behind her, alive with noise and promise. Beside her stood Silas Croft, his hat pulled low, his ticket in hand. He said, "My place is with you, and with the child who's yet to see spring." As the train rolled west towards the golden promise of California, Ara watched the mountains fade into pale blue haze. The long winter was over. She had faced the darkness, outlived the ghost, and carved a fragile, beautiful future from the bones of her past. In the reflection of the window, she saw not the frightened widow who once came seeking shelter, but the woman who has survived the mountain that killed all others.